when you raise your hand and say you need help, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Because you're understanding your limitations. And it's the same with making a decision. Making a decision without information is you're making a bad decision. Asking for help, you're recognizing, hey, I have the knowledge to get to this point, but I need just a little bit more. And I tell everyone here, and I've preached this throughout my career, ask for help.
Welcome to the RockstarsRocking podcast, powered by Voluntary Disruption, a show dedicated to people who are crushing their business and life goals. These are bite-sized conversations with leading rock stars in their respective industry who are pumped to share their story to help drive you to the next level. So, are you ready to rock? Speaking of rock stars, here's your host, Eric Silverman.
Hey rock stars, welcome back to another episode of Rockstars Rocking. And boy, do I have a rock star with me today. Everybody meet my friend Ed Walker, CEO of Armada Care out of the northern greater Baltimore area, I should say, Hunt Valley, Maryland, to be specific if we want to get technical. Ed, what's up, man? Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, Eric, it's great to see you, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, it's my pleasure. I've known you now for a few years. We've worked together a little bit. I appreciate that. And I've gotten to know you. And, I have a bunch of questions today surrounding business and leadership and growth and a whole bunch of stuff that I want to dig into because, the neat thing about my relationship with Ed, most people wouldn't know, is not only have I worked closely with Ed over the last few years in some different business things we put together, but I've also had the pleasure and privilege of getting to know his team, his staff, his employees, whatever term you want to use. And I really love how they look up to Ed and how they admire him. And that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to have Ed here on the show, because to me, it goes deeper than just Ed being a figurehead as a company. I mean, he's in the trenches. He's talking with his people daily. And I know they admire him for that. So I want to start, Ed, if you don't mind, talking about a little bit about your past. So, I understand, I don't know the details, but I understand you started out in a sales role back in the day in the carrier world. Like me, I came from the carrier world. Can you talk about what your goal was when you left college and got into the benefits insurance world and started in sales? Well, I don't know that your goal was ever to be the CEO of Armada Care. You probably didn't even know what Armada Care was. It might not have even existed. Where are we at?
Yeah, that's funny because I also, I also didn't go to college to be in the insurance business either. So
there you go. Me neither.
I've been doing this for, 33 years. I started with Monumental Corporation down on Charles Street in Baltimore. I guess that was 1988. And one thing I knew when I came out of college, I wasn't the smartest student. I often found myself in predicaments, but I usually got myself out of those predicaments. But I had the opportunity to get close to some marketing professors, and I also was I started a T-shirt business in college, so I knew what I wanted to do coming out of school, and that was to be in sales and to be more client focused. So I had a couple opportunities coming out of school. One of those was in the computer field. Didn't work out. That company merged with another, so I was sort of like back out on the streets. When I graduated from college, my parents gave me a gift, which was a student loan book. So I had to quickly figure out, I had to get a job. So I knew some folks down at the Monumental Corporation, Monumental General. That was part of the Aegon Group. And I got in there, not in the role that I wanted. I was a commission clerk. But the guy that hired me said he knew what I wanted to do. I said, look, I want to be in sales. He said, be in this role for a year and I'll get you an interview. So he did get me an interview with the head of sales and marketing in the financial institution business. And I was hired. I really didn't have a position per se. They were a small company. Actually, they were probably 20 million as a carrier. And I had the opportunity to just do a lot of different things. I was out traveling. I was an account manager. I was a service rep. I was a trainer. So I had the opportunity to do a lot of things. But ultimately, I wanted to be a regional vice president of sales. I kind of saw those guys. I'm like, man, that looks like fun. They're jumping on airplanes. They're going to different places. They're doing deals. And I thought that's really what I want to do. So that was my goal. And it probably took me, I don't know, 5 years or so to get there. And I had to do a lot of different things to get there. It wasn't I look at a career not as like a building, but it's a tree. And sometimes you have to, jump on another branch. For me, I wound up going in a different division that I didn't have the background in, but that all worked out. And I became a regional manager. I think that was around 1993 or so. And it was great. I loved it. I loved traveling. I loved meeting people. Back then, we didn't have cell phones and Blackberries. We had nothing. We didn't even have a computer. So it was very relationship oriented. And I worked with some really great guys and ladies at the time that just were great mentors for me and really taught me a lot about relationships and business. And it was just a great time for me. I was young and just really soaking in everything that I could. But I was a sales rep and it was a great job.
So you know what I love about that story? I've never heard that story. I've had many meetings with Ed. We've broke bread many times, but what I love about it is you got your hands dirty. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, and you've seen it too, where somebody in a executive position like yourself now, when they look back, not always, but a lot of times I've seen they never actually got their hands dirty. They didn't do the various roles, the things that maybe they didn't want to do. They weren't forced to do or required to do prior to getting where they're at now. So, it reminds me of Marriott Corporation. My brother-in-law, his goal, his vision was always to run his own Marriott resort down in Florida, and he's doing it now. However, before he could do that, it took him so many years. He had to do everything from cleaning to making beds to working the front desk and everything in between, to sales and marketing, because part of their requirement is you can't rise to that position unless you literally know what it's like to be in every other position. So I really admire that. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why your team likes you and admires you and respects you so much, because they know that you've been there in some capacity and done that in some capacity. So let me ask you about this. You talked, you briefly touched on mentorship and relationships and so forth. Can you talk about mentorship with respect to where we're at in the year 2021 when we record this, moving into 2022? This podcast is going to be online forever, hopefully. So talk about where mentorship was for you, where it is now, and where do you think it should go?
Yeah, that's it's very timely. If I think back, on my career, I had a desire. I wanted to get ahead. I was very goal oriented, and I just I made friends with people that I thought could help me. I sought them out. I had a great boss on the sales side, and he taught me just many like great lessons. Remember the movie Jerry Maguire, and the guy would say, hey, if the cash register rings, make sure it rings for yourself. He always had a lot of those sayings. But one of the things that he taught me in sales was, these sales is a relationship business. These people, they became my friends. And he just really, he allowed me to make decisions. So he always said, like, a decision is having the right amount of information to be able to make the call. So he believed in me. And I always thought, wow, if I was ever in a position one day, like, I'd want to be able to return that. I mentioned, I was in sales. I was pretty successful. I was doing some big deals. but I'd bring a piece of business in, I'd give it to the underwriters, the actuaries, and they'd go behind the door and come out and say, here, go offer this. And I wanted to know, like, what do you guys do back there? What are you doing? And so I talked about my career, I wanted this position, but then after that, I wanted to know more. So I was seeking knowledge. And I wanted to understand, like, what do you do? And I felt like if I knew more, then I could actually be more effective in the field and get deals done quicker. So I had a guy that I was friends with, the CFO, and he and I are still good friends today. And sort of, he's very successful in a different aspect. But, I said, hey, Dave, I'm really intrigued with, like, he was my mentor. I said, hey, I would like you to mentor me. I asked him, I said, I want to learn more about the business. And he said, Ed, it seems like you want to do more than sales. And I said, I don't know if I'd ever want to run a business. It seems like it's a pain in the butt, and you're dealing with all these problems. But I was intrigued by that. And he said, there's two things we could do. There's two tracks. You could go and spend a year in every part of this company, and that might take you, a decade, or you can go back and we'll sponsor you, and you can get an executive MBA. So were it not for that mentor, he sort of, this didn't happen overnight. We built a relationship, and he knew I was serious about, like, wanting to learn more. But he gave me access. I had to do the work. I had to put the work in. But, I went through MBA school at Loyola, did it over the weekends. I remember being on airplanes and just having to study and do all that stuff. And it was fun. I loved it. I was just a sponge. And it was, I was applying some of the things I was learning in grad school to, like, businesses. So I had some business ideas, and I pitched it to Dave, and he said, hey, let's pull the exec team together. And it was the president of the company, CEO of the company, and a couple other folks. And they said, stop what you're doing. You're regional sales vice president. Stop what you're doing, and we want you to focus on this business. So the business idea was like creating a PEO unit, and it was a tremendous failure. But I actually planned, like, an exit strategy, and I had to initiate an exit strategy. But after that, I said, why did you do that? Why did you like let me do that? I was successful. And they said, look, we believed in you, and you were passionate about this. You're applying what you were learning. And what better way to, like, invest in you and to give you firsthand experience? You got the book experience. You're applying your book skills to real life. What better way than to kind of let you, run with this? So that kind of, like, set me on a different path and trajectory with my career. If I bring it, so I always had people that I wasn't afraid to ask for help or knowledge or any of those things. And, it was a different world back then. But if I look today, my daughter, she just graduated. She's working up in New York for a bank in an investment field. And, we talk, and she said, Dad, I'm in this remote environment, and I want to meet with, like, my boss's boss. I want to talk to people. So she knows that, I did that. She listened growing up. And that's one of the things that I am concerned a bit about, what's happening today. I'm a firm believer in a hybrid, work week. And I do believe, even here at Armada, we have Mondays and Fridays where you can work wherever you want. But I also believe we need to be in the office for a number of reasons. Culturally, we need to collaborate with people. It's good for people's mental health. And then it's also good for, we have new people in the company. My door's open. They can ask me questions. They can, mingle with other executives. I think that's needed. So that is one thing that I am concerned with, is we kind of get in this, oh, remote's great. It is for certain things, but, we can't lose sight of the role of relationships in the workplace. Leaders want to help people. You know, I never had a leader in my career who said, no, I'm not going to help you. It's part of being a leader. It's a responsibility of being a leader. It's what leaders like to do. They like to teach people. So I hope that that's one of the things that I would like to see us do more of. I'd like to see more people come in. I know that we need to be safe, but you know, that's somewhat of a concern for me as I look in, and it's something that I had, you know, personally, and I benefited from, you know, being around leaders and mentors. And I think, you know, that's something that, you know, younger people that are early stage in the workplace, you know, they could be losing out on that without even knowing it.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at your career, right? Even mine, I can say the same thing. Who knows where we'd be if we were in the environment we are now back then. Our careers, the way we were shaped and molded by our mentors and so forth, may certainly look very different these days. I like what you said about failure. I like how they kind of threw you in and they believed in you, and you failed and you owned it and you learn from it, right? I mean, as cliche as it may sound, it's just such a truism of business and life and sports. I mean, failure can certainly make you stronger if you don't let it get to you, if you certainly
Right.
take what you learn from it and apply it to the future. And you know what I really like too is that you're not afraid to ask for help. I still think too many people think it's a taboo
Yeah,
topic to say that they need help. Do you agree with
absolutely.
that?
I agree with I agree with you. I always thought, and again, this is something that somebody taught me. When you raise your hand and say you need help, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, because you're understanding your limitations. And
Yep.
it's the same with making a decision. Making a decision without information is you're making a bad decision. But you know, asking for help, you're recognizing, hey, I have the knowledge to get to this point, but I need just a little bit more. And I tell everyone here, and I've preached this throughout my career, ask for help.
So I totally agree. I have you know, for our podcast here, Rockstars Rocking, we have um, a number of listeners by far and away who are salespeople in the insurance world, producers, carrier reps, brokers, advisors, entrepreneurs, individuals, and many of them, not all, but many of them are younger, and they definitely have a goal of rising through the ranks of their firm and or corporate America with respect to the carriers they work in. What are some tips or advice things that you learned that you can kind of be focused and detailed on to give them if they say, you know, your goal is to be the regional sales vice president, and they say that their goal is they'd like to be the president or CEO of XYZ company that they're currently with, or what have you. You know, what are some tangible things you can tell them that you believe helped you along the way, other than we talked about having a good mentor?
Um, yeah, I think one is, if that's your aspiration, then it's a matter of, well, how do I get there?
Hmm.
You know, and I always had goals like, where do I want to go in my career? You know, I always thought about, what are my options? You know, what's in front of me? What are my alternatives? So, you know, I would say you have to be goal oriented. You have to have sort of a vision of what you want to achieve, you know, and write it down. But you also have to be able to have like milestones along the way. And you also have to be prepared, as good of a plan or roadmap that you can kind of draw out. You have to be prepared to, you know, course correct.
Hmm.
I think, you know, it's a little bit of a tangent, but, you know, I've done these multi-sport triathlon and Ironman events. And I do those because I am goal oriented. It's something that gives me like a short-term win. And I like the challenge, but as much as you practice, when you get into the race, there's something that could go wrong. And you have to just like figure out where you are. You might have to pause for a second, collect your thoughts. You might be, feeling pretty bad. But eventually you need to kind of get back on the bike or the run and figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get back to my goal? So, you need to be prepared to make adjustments along the way. That's why I mentioned a career is not like a building. It's more like a tree, and you
Right.
might have to jump off. The other thing that I would do, that's more around the planning and kind of having a vision. And the mentoring is good. Like, who can I talk to? Who can I talk to that's either been there? Who can I talk to? That's currently in the position. And like I said, most of those folks, they want to help. So don't be afraid to say to someone, hey, I'm interested in one day becoming the leader of a group, eventually a CEO. What are the steps? The other thing, and this was something for me, I always thought, when I was in a company and I wasn't in a leadership role, that these management teams would get in place and there was like this roadmap and here's all the employees, and Ed, we're going to put Ed in this role in 2 years, and we're going to put this person in 3 years. And that does not exist anywhere, anywhere. And even here at Armada, it doesn't exist. Now we do succession planning and things like that. But the other advice that I can give you is, and this was advice that was given to me, seek an opportunity. If you find something, when I was at Monumental and Aegon and Transamerica, if you find something that's an opportunity, seek it out. Draw up a plan. Have an idea. But that's the type of when you can think strategically and spot a problem, and then you can also articulate it in terms of how do we operationalize around this? What's the value created? Those are sort of the things one of the things that a CEO does. So don't wait. Don't wait for things. If you wait, you'll be waiting a long time. You need to, to seek things out. And who cares if someone says, well, that's a crazy idea. You might have 10 crazy ideas, but sooner or later, you're going to have a good one. And that gets recognized. So don't wait for things, make things happen.
Oh, I mean, 100%. Some of the craziest ideas, we are all so excited that they were crazy enough to put them together. Think of Uber and all those type. I mean, there's so many ideas out there that I guarantee somebody was like, that's kind of stupid. That's crazy. And then they pushed forward and look at it now. You spoke about leadership. You spoke about Ironman. Let me ask you this. We have a number of CEOs and entrepreneurs who listen to our show, and we're very appreciative. What about when you have one of your top people leave, right? And they come to you and they say, hey, I have this opportunity. I really like it here, but what do you think? I mean, I've gotten to know you and your team, and that stuff happens. It's happened to me. It happens to the best of us. What do the best leaders do in those situations?
Yeah, and it's happened to me, many times, and that's part of having good people. I left Transamerica. I had an opportunity to come here because of the relationships that I had built with the founders. I would say so. Part of that's like knowing, you need to know your top talent. I'm a big believer in development. How do we develop leaders? What do they need? So oftentimes people are they're good performers. They're great at what they do, but if you need to get them to the next level, they may need to round out leadership skills and things like that. So I think that the role of leaders is to be able to spot future talent. I mean, if I look at my job now, it's around how do I prepare this organization for the future? How do I prepare our leaders who, succession planning and those things. So, but I'm pretty honest with people about their aspirations. I had someone here, and you know her, that I worked with for many years, really young, bright person, very talented. And, you know, she wanted to go to law school, and this is something she wanted to do. So I encouraged her to do that. And I kind of knew, like, hey, there's a decision point coming, and that decision is either stay or, you know, seek the legal path. And I just think that's something, you know, I could have been selfish and said, you know, I'm not going to do that because I don't want you to leave.
Right.
Look, people have choices, though. You know, if that's something they want, they could go somewhere else. But why wouldn't I help this person? This person was extremely helpful to me. And I just think that's something we need to be honest. You know, obviously when you develop people, you'd like for them to stay. But I think it's also good. It's you know, it's helping people regardless of the outcome. Betters that person, betters society. And I do think it's something that we have responsibility for. I've done the same thing here with, you know, another person that wanted to get a analytics. You know, we had some decisions to make around, gee, do we hire someone? Do we outsource? And we said, we have a person here that let's just invest in their education. You know, so those are, like, you know, you have to look at the situations. And that was one where that the person did stay. So, but I think when you have good people, you just need to develop them. And if they leave, they leave. I left Trans. It was a great run. You know, they provided me great opportunities. I look back fondly on that. I learned a lot. I wouldn't be where I am without, you know, the investments they made in me, and you know, the freedoms that they gave me to try to do things that I want to do. So I just think that it's our responsibility as leaders, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're a bigger sports guy than I am. I'm strictly baseball, as you know, but I look at the Tampa Bay Rays in baseball and the Oakland A's. These teams have no budget. They're always in the top. Heck, the Rays went to the series the other year. How do they do so? How are so many good people, amazing people, Hall of Fame talent all around Major League Baseball? Are if you look at their background, a lot of them came from the Rays or the A's. I don't know why it has to be the Rays or the A's, but it's so true. And the key is they always have a deep bench, and they're always looking to continue to build more talent around more talent. So I agree with you. You can't hold people back. And look at you. You were you just said it. You left Transamerica. You had a great run, and you're very grateful and thankful that they put you on that path, Aegon, et cetera. So I love that. Let me ask you a question. I want to get into a few other things, something a little bit different. But one thing is around around hiring in 2021 and 2022. So, you know, if I'm a younger person and I'm out there looking for a career or job, I'm in college or what have you, even high school, quite frankly. What's your take on businesses that scour? A lot of them do. They scour a candidate's social media post, assuming it's open and not private. You know, I look at things that a kid, a 16-year-old kid, might have posted that could come back and haunt them in when they're 23, looking for their first real career. What's your view on that?
Well, I'm glad that Facebook and other things weren't around when I was younger. Yeah, you know, I would say, you know, look, you know,
It's tough.
It's tough. You know, sometimes you make mistakes, but you grow up. Unless, to me, you know, unless it's really, you know, something that was illegal, you know, very, you know, detrimental to people, and really something that's goes against, you know, our beliefs and values. You know, I think young people need to be young. They need to they're going to do stuff.
Did you ever have that conversation with your kids as they've grown up with social media to say, hey, look, be careful what you put out there. I don't want it to haunt you in the future.
Yeah. I did. And, they were careful. But, not everyone is.
Right.
And also, not everyone's like me. So I realized my view on that might be a little bit different.
Sure.
But I kind of look at myself. Like I said, I wasn't the best student. I found myself in precarious situations. And I tell my parents I've learned a great deal in college. It just wasn't in the classroom. The world's not like that anymore. But I do think people need chances. If you're going to just like cut some kid off at the knees for something he did when he was 15 years old, I don't.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about felonies and stuff. I'm just talking about he or she made a post on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and they look back on it years later and they're like, wow, maybe I certainly don't believe that anymore, and maybe I shouldn't have posted that. So
yeah,
and people just see it all the time. Yeah, people change. Yeah.
People change.
So let me ask you this. When it comes to I mean, you're a salesperson. I suspect, or I don't even want to suspect who your target market and audience was, but like, look at your salespeople. Your salespeople at Armada are looking to meet with decision makers, C-suite, founders, owners, presidents, people that can influence decision. Could be HR. So let's reverse roles, right? I have a lot of folks that listen to Rockstars Rocking that are salespeople, and no, don't call Ed, but they want to meet with CEOs, CFOs, folks in your position. What are some ways that you remember getting the attention of somebody like yourself, or what are some ways that you would encourage salespeople to be creative to grab the attention and not just hope and pray and pick up the phone and smile and dial?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I was in sales, I was in the I'd say my first big kind of sales job was I was in the affinity market. So, there was a known entity, I was selling to TPAs. I was a carrier rep, essentially. There were various industry events and things like that. So I was fortunate that I did have some guys that I could kind of ride the coattails. Like they could get me the introduction. They could say, hey, here are the folks. And that's something like you should leverage today. Like, who are people who can help you with open doors and gain some influence? I had to just like, I just, for me, it was perseverance. I remember the first like kind of big sale I made. I tried to make friends with this person. I tried to be helpful. I tried to, I knew that I wasn't going to get the pot of gold unless I also just kind of worked hard and did some things for this agency that I was trying to crack. I invited the CEO to things and he wouldn't show up. I kept inviting him. I didn't just stop at the CEO. So I did get relationships with, I learned that organization. I learned who he relied on. I became sort of a go-to person to those individuals. So that kind of got me like, hey, this Ed Walker guy, he does what he says he does. So, I would say for me, it was more like, perseverance. I was trying to get in with this CEO. It was his company. He wasn't going to make he wasn't going to do business unless I knew him. And I ultimately had to sell to him, but, I just had to work every like angle to eventually get to him.
So you ask and you continue to be professionally persistent. You were creative. I mean, these are all the things that I do that we hear and people hear all the time. But I assumed you'd say it that way, but I did that on purpose because what I want folks to remember is there's no magic pill, right? There's no silver bullet. It's a relationship world.
Right.
If you pick up the phone and try to land that huge elephant, maybe it's to meet with the CEO of XYZ company. Yeah, I guess 1 in a million stuff happens. But you got to play the long game. This is not a
Right.
get rich quick scheme. Sales doesn't work that way, at least in my opinion, particularly if you're trying to build relationships. So let me ask you this. Think about the last, this is a topic that I hear all the time that salespeople that listen to this are excited to learn about. Think about the last person or two that reached you, somebody that had been working on you for a while. They had something they wanted to pitch you, and you don't have to name names, of course, but was there something special that eventually got you to say, all right, geez, I'm busy, but I'll take 20 minutes or I'll take your call? Or was it just like you, professional persistence? Anything?
Yeah. So, I think today, like my inbox just gets barraged with messages.
Not to
I
mention
do,
LinkedIn Messenger.
yeah. And so LinkedIn is interesting. I think, it's weird, you say something and the next thing you know, it's on your phone. But, a lot of times it's just persistency. And there have been times when someone's just reached out to me. And then for some reason, maybe it was something we were talking about in an executive meeting or just something that, I was reading something that popped in my mind and I'm like, okay, boom, you hit me when I had
Timing.
to leave. Yep.
Timing.
Timing is everything. And
Sure.
so, there's sales, you have to ask, right? I mean, you hit that one, Eric. If you don't ask, you don't get, but also just being persistent in the right way.
Yeah. I mean, closed mouths don't get fed.
Yeah. The other thing is, when I was younger and what I would do is I would just make my rounds. I had a pretty large region. I would just go out, visit everyone, and, they would see me. It doesn't happen anymore. If somebody came into my office, I'd probably sit down with them. Like,
uh-oh, be careful.
Yeah, no, but I would because they're thinking differently,
No, but you can respect that because you did it.
Yeah, that would get my attention because everything is, and look, we do the same thing. We use Salesforce and we're generating leads and we have a certain cadence.
Sure.
But if somebody like cold called me, I'd give them the time of day.
There you go. You heard it there first, everybody. Let me ask you this. I want to get laser focused on Armada for our last few minutes here. What's on the horizon? A lot of people may not even know about Armada Care. What's on the horizon? Maybe give a quick little intro and tell people why it's so great. I mean, look, I'll use myself as an example. I've never heard of Armada, and I'm in Baltimore. I mean, we're what, 30 minutes apart, roughly. And I've known about it for years now, but I was introduced to Ed via email through a mutual relationship. When I met Ed and he was generous enough to meet with me, I didn't have anything to sell. He didn't have anything to sell. We were just meeting because somebody we know and respect said we should meet, which, by the way, is how relationships get started. Right. But talk about Armada Care for a minute.
Yeah. So, if you look kind of at our core business, I mean, we're an MGU TPA, but we're focused in on the complementary health benefits. So, and what does that mean? There's supplemental health benefits, but we've historically targeted the C-suite and owners. So if you think about your primary plan, it covers so many things. There's deductibles, co-pays, maybe there's a formulary that only certain drugs you can access. Our plan sits on top of that. So essentially the play is it can restore 100% coverage for a targeted group of people. And it's also been a tax advantage benefit. So it's a business expense. So I won't get into all those selling features, but a premium is a business expense. it can be leveraged versus giving an employee cash. So that's historically what we've done, is to focus on kind of a core group. We've and our service, I say what sets us apart is our service. So we've had to, we've got about 11,000 primary customers, 33,000 or so, in total. And we have to deliver white glove service. These are folks who they want what they want when they want it. And, we have to really service them. So our service is incredible. Our net promoter score for the last 5 years has been over 70. Even during the pandemic, our team did a great job. We had a score over 72. So that's kind of like our why we win. What we've been doing is finding ways that we can expand coverage. So to expand beyond the owner group, the C-suite, and to go broader into the population. You and I worked together on one of those projects.
Sure.
So we've been doing that with expanding coverages, coming in with different price points. What we're doing right now, where we're focusing, is kind of targeting different segments. So, if I look at, smaller firms, we're creating some conveniences so that they can access buy online, so that it's a less invasive sales process, much easier. And then when I look at larger markets, we're really targeting in on healthcare. That's an area where, our product fits well because of the retention and recruiting aspect that it brings to those companies. So those are two areas, two very different. One is on a smaller segment. One is on a very large segment that we're focused on.
I like it. Well, what I've seen since I've known you the last few years, and what you really just described too, is, any company has to expand and develop new opportunity and new products and new services. And what I've seen with you guys, and you just described, is you're not afraid to try. Again,
Right.
Failure is not the worst thing ever. You put together the best faith effort and the plan, and you strategically go to market. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But what I also like, that I can attest to, is that you're not one as a leader who's afraid to pull the plug. So
Right.
if you're not going to pull it after the first day or the first week, but after a set period of time, if you don't see the vision, it's not working. What's that saying? Cut your losses, move on. Let's keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer in the lean approach: build, measure, learn.
Sure.
And like I tell our folks, hey, try different things. They may not all work. If it doesn't work, let's fail forward. Let's learn from that. But sometimes you do have to say, you know what, we've tried this. We need to retrench. So again, that's I think that's a strength.
Yeah. No,
'Cause
I
you
agree.
can't do everything.
And some of not some, I mean, all the best leaders I've ever met, they give their team, their employees, room to fail, right? I mean, if you run an organization where you feel like you're a good leader, in my opinion, but your people don't take a calculated risk and they don't take a chance or get creative because they're fearing failure and then fearing their job or fearing getting reprimanded, you're never going to foster opportunity for growth. Do you agree?
I do. And, one of the things that I tell my employees is, look, I want you to try things. I want you to take risks. There's nothing that you can do or break that is going to implode this company. There's nothing. So, but I want you to take risks. But I want you to learn from them. I want you to tell us what you're doing, but there's nothing that you can do that's really going to take us down. And if you're trying things, I got your back. Because if people aren't trying, I'm not developing the next leaders for this. And
goes back to that.
We're not perfect. I've certainly made mistakes in my career, and I've had the fortune to have leaders who have said, "Hey, get back up, try again." And again, like I said, Eric, I I always said if I ever got in a position, I would want to extend the same things that have been extended to me.
Pay it forward. Yeah, pay it forward. I love it. Well, listen, Ed, I appreciate it. I know you're busy running this big company, Armada Global, Armada Care. You guys are rocking. This has been a fantastic episode of Rockstars Rocking. I'm so super pumped that you came aboard. And look, I just show up and ask questions. I let you do all the talking. So, I'm not a producer, so I have a whole back office that puts this together. I appreciate them. So for everybody behind the scenes at the Rockstars Rockin' podcast, I'm Eric Silverman. That, everybody, is Ed Walker, CEO of Armada Care in Hunt Valley, Maryland, the greater Baltimore area. And appreciate you, Ed, and I appreciate everybody listening. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, anything you want to add, feel free to reach out to us via any of the communication channels that are out there. We are not hard to reach, unless you're a salesperson. Don't go bother Ed. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Eric. I hope to see you soon.
You got it.
Take care.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Rockstars Rocking podcast. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. 5 stars would totally rock. Until next time, Rockstars, keep rocking.